Hello, welcome to Ask Rabbi Spivak. I'm Rabbi Spivak, and today's topic is, why do we cover the mirrors in a house of mourning? What's the reason for it? Many people say that the reason is because when we come into a house of mourning, we have to realize that our egos are not the most important thing. That there is a life that has been taken away, and we now have to think about that and the family, as opposed to thinking about ourselves, which we manifest in looking in a mirror. Now, that's a beautiful explanation, and it probably has a lot of merit to it. But deep into Jewish mystical, Kabbalistic teachings, there is yet another explanation. And you have to get yourself on a little bit of a spiritual roll to appreciate this. Let us start from the idea that no one really ever dies. That the essence of a person is not the flesh and blood, but the essence of a person is the soul, the neshama, the nefesh. That soul is forever. And the fact that a person is not seemingly alive in this world really doesn't affect the existence of the soul. The soul comes into the earth, comes into this world through the mother, clothed in the flesh and blood of a baby, and grows up in this world. The soul is really the awareness, the intelligence, the intellect of a person, the thinking part, the part that when scientists open a brain and just see a piece of meat can really not explain on its ultimate level, because the soul is that consciousness, that intellect/consciousness. And it never goes away. And when a person dies, the soul departs the body and either goes back to its resting place in the world above, or, according to many Kabbalists, can be reincarnated into yet another human being. But the issue here is why we cover the mirrors in a house of mourning. And the answer is that the Kabbalists tell us that when a person passes away, that person's soul sometimes comes back to the house of mourning. It does not want to leave. And when it comes back, it reaches a situation where if there is a mirror, that consciousness, that soul consciousness, is used to, for the last 70, 80, 120 years of looking in the mirror and seeing a flesh and blood body. But if it would have looked now in the mirror, it would have seen nothing. And that would have frightened it, say the Kabbalists. That would have frightened it by terrible, terrible, terrible proportions. So in order not to frighten the soul, the mystical explanation is that we cover the mirrors so the soul doesn't have to look into a mirror. As deep and maybe as a little bit down this will make you, there's a positive side to this. And the side is that no one ever really dies. That consciousness goes on and on. People thought people died. In the time 500-600 years ago, they put a feather under the nose. If the feather didn't move, the person was dead, not according to biology. And then they started to say, if the heart was beating and stopped beating, the person was dead. But a person could stay alive when it came to the brain. Now they say that through an electroencephalograph, that if that is flat, that person has died then. But how do we know? How do we know if our measuring systems, which were so crude only a few hundred years ago, and could not detect life except with the use of a feather, how do we know that our measuring systems now can detect a conscious life beyond that of flesh and blood? That is what the Kabbalists teach. And that is the reason for hope, because that loved one never really left you. That loved one is still there in a state that you cannot perceive, but still there and still caring and still loving. This has been Ask Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. We hope that you have learned something from it, and get in touch with us if you have any questions. Until we meet again, Rabbi Yaakov Spivak saying, Seid gesund lehitraot, Shalom al Yisrael. And most of all, my friend, Chazak.